travesty that for 5% of the cost of the games, which is apparently all the corporate sponsors are paying, despite their adverts across London saying without the corporations none of this would be possible, for 5% we basically sold out the integrity of what should be, you know, a wonderful celebration of global unity and excellence, and, you know, inspiring kids to live healthy lives, and, you know, all the good things it's meant to be about are completely undermined by all the horribleness. And, you know, we're talking about corporations that are responsible, you know, directly or indirectly for the deaths of thousands of vulnerable people across the world. You know,
there's a couple of things here, really. It's not so much that I don't think anyone's going to go to the Olympic Games are a terrible idea. It's more the way it's been handled throughout. This is effectively in East London a kind of corporate exclusion zone. You know, you got these stories of local shopkeepers, bagel shop nearby put up the Olympic rings made out of bagels that got ripped down. Anyone drinking the wrong kind of Coke within the, you know, a mile of the park gets it ripped out of them. There's no more troops in East London than there are in Afghanistan. So it's this horrible combination of like just rampant corporate horribleness. These sort of very unpleasant companies, Dow Chemicals being one of the principal sponsors, BP being another one. Very unpleasant companies tramping around all over the place, combined with this weird militarisation. Obviously, a lot of people locally are being very concerned about the missiles, the surface-to-air missiles being mounted on local blocks of flats, apparently to shoot down planes, which hardly sounds like a great idea over, you know, densely populated urban area like East London. So there's a whole load of issues. Like I said, it's not so much like boo hiss the Olympics as such. It's more than just the way the whole thing gets played out, the ridiculous rigmarole around it, the elitism of the thing. That I think is what's motivated people to turn up here.
We are campaigning against two of the corporations in particular. One is Dow Chemical and the other is Atos. Now, Dow Chemical is responsible for poisoning the whole world for the last 100+ years, and we have been in solidarity with the women and children in Bhopal and the whole community affected by the gas tragedy, and also campaigning for a clean-up of the factory, which has not been dealt with for all those years. And every time it rains, poisons wash into the water supply, and that's why children are being born now with disabilities as a result of the poison. It's about 25,000 people have died so far, and 500,000 affected by the poison, so it's a really huge scale. Huge scale of harm that's been caused. Their profits should be put into compensating all the communities that they've harmed. I mean, they also, for example, they also make banana pesticide, which in Nicaragua is wreaking havoc in communities there and affecting the banana workers who are handling the pesticide. Yeah. You know, so everywhere you look, I mean, Vietnam, they made napalm and Agent Orange, which is affecting the Vietnamese people and also the American servicemen and their families who returned. Yeah, we're also here to protest against Atos. Atos is a French IT multinational which is sponsoring the Paralympic Games, which is highly ironic because they have the DWP contract to kick off sick and disabled people off benefits, and they test 11,000 people a week, and most of them they find fit for work, including women with terminal cancer, guys on dialysis, people with lung disease, and they say that if you can sit in front of a computer that makes you fit for work. And it's absolutely horrendous what's happening to people. And they get a £1,400 bonus for each person they kick off benefits. And we are absolutely determined to defend our welfare rights, to defend our welfare state, and to stop these companies profiting from our pain and celebrating on the graves of people who've committed suicide because they can't see a future. I mean, there's people dying who are found fit for work. There's also a partial figure of 1,100 people who died who've been granted the sickness benefit but are put under work conditions for it, which means you're supposed to be prepared to get yourself back to work. You know, so even people who have been granted the benefit are also dying, and it creates a terrible pressure and anxiety Doctors have come out against the work capability assessment. A lot is happening as a result of all our campaigning across the UK.
So it's a varied bit in how much the taxpayers, I mean, somewhere between 9 and 12 billion seems to be where the figure's landing. I mean, that's happened throughout the entire process. The original bid was put in with a cost back in 2004-05 of 2.3 billion, I think, which is now accelerated into the distance somewhere, as these things always do. But the scale of the change, the expense that this has now created is really, really quite something. We're always told, oh, it's going to pay for itself. You get the corporate sponsors in, they'll pay for the whole lot. Isn't it great? We get this kind of 2-week spectacular out of these corporate sponsors. But of course not. You think of all the other public funding that's had to go into, for example, creating the games lanes. Now, there's another good reason to get somewhat irritated about the way the whole thing's been handled. There's special lanes for Olympic officials, you know, so that they can use them. No one else in London can. Public money used to set those things up. It's not corporate sponsorship that's going into this. So of course it's a nonsense to say that these things are, you know, they're going to make a profit or it's economically viable in some meaningful way. They're not really. It costs a lot of money. Now you may say you want to spend a lot of money on something like this, fine, but let's be honest about what's going on here.
I didn't actually watch the opening ceremony, I'm afraid. I find it quite painful. I have to tell you, I was one of the people who was evicted from the Olympic Park to make way for this Games, and I really find it quite painful watching these things. So I actually didn't turn on, I don't have a TV anyway, and I quite deliberately didn't go to a friend who invited me to go and look at it, and I said, no, I really can't take it.
Why were you evicted from your flat?
Because the Olympic Park, the IOC always requires a large piece of land should be taken over and handed over for the Olympics. That's the other aspect of this. This is about property seizure. You remember, East London's the big property opportunity for London, and so this project came up during the property boom of the early 2000s. Compulsory purchasing land means you get that land at a knockdown price, and then you hand it on to a set of owners. The people who were there before, the local businesses, the jobs which were there, which local people were doing, they've all been cleared out.
You're all about missiles, job losses, Olympics for the bosses. Stop, get up, we know what you're all about. Missiles, job losses, out of boat. Get your missiles 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 out of boat! Get your missiles out of boat! Get your missiles out!
We know what you're all about.
Missiles, job losses, Olympics for the bosses!
Sepco!
Get out!
We know what you're all about.
Missiles, job losses, Olympics for the bosses!
Well, I'm here on behalf of the Defend the Right to Protest campaign because the Olympics have shown how we're subjected to severely oppressive policing in this country. The Olympics has really highlighted this, for example, with the protest, the critical mass protest last night, which between 50 and 100 cyclists were arrested for protesting. They've all been given the antisocial behaviour order with Olympic conditions, meaning they can't go anywhere Olympic sites. And this isn't just, this repressive policing is not just related to the Olympics. It's a symbol of a wider pattern of police violence. We saw this at the G20 protest when Ian Tomlinson was killed after being hit by a police officer, and at the student demonstrations of 2010 where we had protesters such as Alfie Meadows he was battered so severely that he needed to have life-saving surgery that evening. The protesters at that demonstration were also kettled until late into the night in Westminster Bridge and horse-charged, even though they were only protesting peacefully. So the Olympics have kind of shown up that this is not just this policing is not just a problem at specific public order events, but is a wider problem. And we're very concerned that no police officer is ever held accountable for these sorts of actions on the street. So we support the families. So we're supporting the Tomlinson family, the Rigg family, in their fight for justice for their loved ones.
How many people have died at the hands of police in Britain?
There are thousands, in the realm of about 1,400-ish since the early 90s have died at the hands of the police or shortly after having contact with the police. However, no police officer has been held guilty for any offence committed whilst on duty since 1986.
Yes, you have the enormous expenditure on security. Most of it is just inconvenience to local people. If you want to have effective security, actually you should be concentrating, if you want to deal with terrorists, you have to concentrate on penetrating those groups. This security is reactive, and it's annoying, and people get stopped in the road and asked to produce identity and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely ridiculous measures like putting missiles on top of a block of flats. If you're going to shoot down a jet, for heaven's sake, let's hope that doesn't happen. You do it outside of the city. You don't do it over the city.
The MP for Hayes and Harlington, please give it up for John McDonnell.
Thank you. Let me just say I'm here in solidarity. I'm here in solidarity with the families of the 25,000 people that were killed as a result of Union Carbide, now taken over by Dow, and for whom Dow refused to accept any responsibility. I'm here in solidarity with the people of Mongolia who have been forced off their land by Rio Tinto Zinc just to mine the gold and the metals that will be hung round the necks of athletes over the next few weeks. I'm here in solidarity with all those people in North America whose environment is now threatened by BP and the tar sands operation, and all those in the Mexican Gulf that BP has already polluted their land, their sea. And I'm also especially here in solidarity with all those people who've been forced off benefit despite their disability by the scourge of ATOS. What these companies have done have taken the wonderful spirit and symbolism of the Olympics and they've dragged it into the gutter with their corporatization. They've destroyed that wonderful venture that was established so long ago in which people could come together as people, not countries, and compete with each other to demonstrate their skills and their strengths, and they've dragged it into the dirt. And our campaign is to reclaim the Olympics, to bring it back to the people, to kick out the corporations, to kick out the sponsors and bring it back to sport once again. But you know, it's not just about individual companies, is it? What they've done is they've taken something which we all value and turned it into a commodity to be bought and sold. And that isn't about individual companies, it's about a system. We call it capitalism. That's why this isn't just a campaign about individual grievances, this is about a campaign to change the system. Now we've got an opportunity, and it's been mentioned, in this coming 6 to 12 months to mobilise in October against austerity. And the march in October is going to be critical to giving people confidence that they can fight back. But after that, there has been planned now strike after strike in what is going to be an autumn of anger as workers gain confidence and take industrial action. And to be frank, our job now is to plan that action, where we bring together industrial action with direct action to do what? Well, to bring this government down. To bring this government down for the crimes it's committed by perpetrating austerity measures upon us. But to be frank, there's no point in replacing this government with what's gone on before. So in every demonstration and on every picket line, every form of direct action, it's our task now to start discussing the sort of society that we want to create. The sort of society that's based upon equality and democracy. And the sort of society that will organise an Olympics that's not exploited by corporations, but is by genuinely for the people, for the sports people, and for our community. Solidarity.
Simon Shaw. I live in Newham. They're calling that the host borough, though that we've had very little benefit from it, ordinary people. And the main reason I'm here is that for the last year I've been campaigning and failed to keep a swimming pool open. It's the nearest swimming pool to the Olympic Park. It's called the Atherton, quarter of a mile away. They closed the swimming pools down in January and they're going to close the centre down entirely in December. And that says everything, I think, about the Olympics. That while the elite swimming pools and facilities are being opened up at a cost of over £9 billion, they're closing stuff for ordinary working class people. The Atherton was used by 240,000 people last year in Newham, which was one of the poorest, the least active and most unhealthy areas in the whole of the country. And it's no surprise that at Athens and at Beijing, firstly at Athens, 45% of our medalists went to public school. At Beijing, 50% of our medalists went to public school. So as in sport and the rest of society, everything's becoming increasingly elitist. And the Olympics isn't about sport for all. Seb Coe and Ken Livingstone and the rest of the elite who went to Singapore to get the Olympics lied. They said that it would lead to a step change in sporting participation. That was a lie, and they promised that there'd be 1 million people doing sport for three times a week for 30 minutes. They dropped that target, so the whole thing was based on a complete myth. I went to see John Carlos the other week, who was made famous by the Olympic salute in 1968, and he summed up the Olympics. He asked the question, why are the Olympics only every 4 years? And the answer to the question is, it takes them that long to count all the money they make. So it's just a big cash cow. The Olympic torch went through Stratford 2 weeks ago, Saturday, and it was preceded by a bus from Samsung, Coca-Cola, and then Lloyds Bank. You know, that epitomises the Olympics. It's for their mates, the corporate sponsors. For the 100 metres final, there's only 27,000 tickets been allocated to ordinary people. So we've paid for the bloody thing. We don't even get to see it. It's for rich people, watched by rich people, and the athletes, to be honest, are rich people. And sport should be for all. So the slogan on here is sport for the millions, sport for the 99%, not for the 1%.